Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, tensions escalate in Kenya over President William Ruto's hefty church donations. Weekend protests erupt amidst a nationwide debate about how appropriate it is to mix political influence and religious funding, particularly amidst a cost of living crisis. Also, as Sudan's brutal conflict drags on, aid workers from Doctors Without Borders try to do what they can to help victims of the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Many are now operating from the coastal city, come de facto temporary capital of the war-torn country. They're in Port-Sudan. And in Nigeria, people of all faiths celebrate a drop in the cost of staples as Muslims across the country mark the holy month of Ramadan. That seems to be accompanied with lower prices. But first, clashes between protesters and police broke out in Nairobi over the weekend amidst demonstrations sparked by President William Ruto's donation of 20 million Kenyan shillings, about 140,000 euros, to a church in the capital. Now, the contribution is one of a number made by Ruto in breach of his own directive stopping government representatives taking part in religious fundraisers. But tensions have also been further ratcheted up by the country's cost of living crisis. Olivia Bizo breaks it all down for us.
At the beginning of last week, President William Ruto donated the equivalent of 140,000 euros to a church just outside Nairobi. That donation sparked outrage on social media, especially among young people. They're angry that that money is not being spent towards essential services like healthcare and education. But despite that discontent, the president made another announcement on Sunday. He said that he was donating a similar amount to a different church in the western city of Eldoret. He also justified these donations, saying they were essential in order to prevent issues like drug abuse. Just after that announcement was made, protests broke out just outside the church on the outskirts of Nairobi, with demonstrators demanding more transparency on how public money is used. Those protests quickly escalated, fires broke out, roads were blocked, and police used tear gas to disperse the protesters. 38 people were arrested, but they were later released after pressure from civil rights organisations. Now, a lot of the Kenyans that I've been speaking to have expressed a lot of anger towards President Ruto for not listening to their demands, and they believe that he's incredibly disconnected from the everyday lives of Kenyans. Now, these frustrations came up a lot during the anti-government protests that took place last year. They were sparked by a proposed finance bill that would increase Kenyans' taxes. Those protests began peacefully, but became incredibly violent, and dozens of people were killed.
Olivia Bizo there for us. Now, Ghana's new-ish president, John Mahama, is still touring junta-led Sahelian countries that form the brand new AES bloc in the hope of convincing them to re-enter the old-school West African ECOWAS fold. Having been in Mali last week, Mahama was in Burkina Faso on Monday, where he acknowledged the rift that saw Ouagadougou, Mali and Niger quit ECOWAS earlier this year, accusing the bloc of not having their back, and that all of this has driven a wedge between the countries of the region. Accra's hoping to bridge that gap, and Justice Baidu is in the Ghanaian capital now to tell us a bit more about how they're hoping to do that. First of all, Justice, so why is it Mahama who is leading the charge on this? He's one of the newest presidents in the ECOWAS bloc, at least, I mean, second time round for him, but, you know, latest to power. Why is he the one who's taking this all on?
Mr. Mahama seem to be in a sort of a privileged situation compared to the other West African leaders, in part because at the time when the decision was being taken for these three Sahelian countries to be removed from ECOWAS and they themselves to also depart the union, Mr. Mahama wasn't president, and so he wasn't a part of that decision. And so as he did speak about in Ouagadougou today, he is sort of immune from the level of mistrust between the leaders of these Sahelian states and the rest of the ECOWAS leaders, especially those from the Francophone nations, with whom these Sahelian states still feel a certain level of distrust for, not least because of their deep ties and connections to France, which is a key player in the issues that are playing up within the ECOWAS sub-region itself. And also in part because Mr. Mahama himself seemed to enjoy a certain level of credibility that many leaders within the region would want to tap into. And it has been described as part of the things that could help in addressing these impasse between ECOWAS and the states.
So credibility, a fresh pair of eyes, but, ECOWAS tried already to stop the AES countries from leaving. They announced it last year. They had a whole year to try and convince them not to actually follow through. They made it very clear that they were quite happy with their decision. What is Mahama going to bring to the table that's new?
Mr. Mahama is preaching bilateral work. So for him, the first step is to improve or to engage so that he brings these countries closer to Ghana first and then the bigger ECOWAS next. In fact, one of the first appointments that he did make was to appoint a special envoy, who is a top security person within Ghana's national security apparatus, specifically dedicated to the countries in this AES. And the work of that this person is supposed to be doing is to be the bridge between the new Ghanaian government and these countries. Ghana is in doing this in part because it looks like it is the country that stands to lose the most if these countries decide not to collaborate any longer with the ECOWAS. Two of these countries, Burkina Faso and Niger, take a lot of their imports because they are landlocked countries, take a lot of their imports through Ghana, Niger and Burkina Faso. In fact, only last week, Burkina Faso began a huge process to store up a lot of oil and energy in Ghana's port city of Tema, which they are planning to transport through Ghana's pipelines to Burkina Faso. And Burkina Faso is also a big trading partner. It supplies a huge chunk of Ghana's vegetable resources, especially on its market. And so it is not at all in Ghana's interest that these countries decide to stay away.
Thanks so much for that. Breaking that all down for us is our Justice Maidu speaking to us from Accra. Now, the UN's migration agency says that despite the ongoing dangers of Sudan's war, nearly 400,000 people have returned to homes that they have fled. Most of the returnees headed back to central Sudanese states, but others have also reportedly risked return to the capital, Khartoum. Overall, about 11.5 million people have been internally displaced by clashes between the army and the RSF paramilitary that broke out in mid-April 2023. The conflicts also sparked the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Our team report from the coastal city of Port-Sudan.
When war breaks out, Doctors Without Borders has to reorganise its logistics. This warehouse, completed in October 2024, is part of that effort.
Everything is stored here at a standard temperature that's ideal for preserving medicine.
MSF's offices were originally in Khartoum. But when the conflict erupted in April 2023, they had to leave quickly.
Moving from Khartoum to Port-Sudan wasn't easy. In Port-Sudan, there was no storage that met MSF's standards. Initially, we had to rent wedding halls to store our supplies.
MSF wasn't alone in relocating to the port city. Hundreds of thousands of Sudanese have also moved here. This neighbourhood was almost empty before the war. Since Lama arrived, the cost of rent has soared.
In this neighbourhood, people didn't rent before. They just moved into empty houses. But once the owners saw the influx of displaced people, they realized they could profit. Now they demand rent. For the past 4 or 5 months, my landlord has raised the rent, telling me leave if you can't pay.
As more people arrive, new construction is underway. The infrastructure just wasn't built to accommodate such a large population.
The city needs stability in its electricity and water supply. Regarding electricity, we began building a new thermal power station in August 2024, and it will be completed soon.
The changes must happen fast. Khartoum has become uninhabitable due to the fighting. As a result, Port-Sudan will play a crucial role in the country's future.
Well, we head to Nigeria now, where as Muslims mark the holy month of Ramadan, all shoppers have welcomed a drop in prices. The cost of some staples seems to have gone down, easing a long nationwide cost of living crisis. Our team reports.
Aisha has everything she needs for breaking the fast. This mother of 9 children can even afford to cook meat. She was pleasantly surprised when she went to the market. Prices have dropped during this Ramadan season.
When there's no money, we can go to the market to buy food. If there's money, you'll buy what you'll eat with your children. That is when you know if things are cheaper or not.
For the first time in over a decade, Nigerians are experiencing a significant drop in food prices during Ramadan, a period traditionally marked by soaring costs.
By this time last year, we could not be able to slaughter the cow. It was just at the end of the Ramadan that we got to slaughter. But this year, as early as today, we slaughtered the cow and then distributed to more than 50 widows.
Nigeria has been grappling with skyrocketing inflation since President Bola Tinubu ended full subsidies and lifted currency controls. However, the Nigerian economy has recently shown strong growth. The annual inflation rate for January dropped to 24.48%, down from 34.80% in December. Yet, the effects of the economic crisis are still being felt, especially with rising rent prices in the country's economic capital, Lagos.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
France 24, your economy explained.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.